active, also members of Ecocivilisation movement, always ready to bring art forward as the way of expression, connection, and as a tool who moves the boundaries and allows everybody else then to comfortably go beyond what is known today. These are the three people we will meet today and talk to them. And I would like to start, Deirdre, with you. And if you allow me, just to open the floor and invite you to share what for you is conflict resolution and what are the spaces where you engage and face this challenge and how do you go about? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the first thing that I want to share is a Violeta, because really we should have the first speaker be an Indigenous Maori from Aotearoa, but there's a campaign to protect the river, because as you know, Wanganui River has been declared the very first legal entity in its own right, but there's a problem now where somebody's trying to bottle it. So I thought we could sing this to start with, and I thought, as you've all been on it for 14 hours already, you might want to stand up and stretch, possibly, if you feel the need to move a wee bit. And I've given the words to Remy, and I'll make a start. It's very simple. So, now do join in. 𝐿𝐻𝐾𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐻 Aroha 𝐾𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐻 Aroha 𝐾𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐻 Koi 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 𝐾𝐬𝐻𝐻 Koi 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 𝐾𝐬𝐻𝐻 Ho no 𝐾𝐬𝐻𝐻 Ho no 𝐾𝐬𝐻𝐻 Peace, peace, peace to the universe. Love, love, love to the universe. Joy, joy, joy to the universe. Truth, truth, truth to the universe. Now, I've never been, that's my very second only public performance, so you know, I hope you understand how lucky you are to have that experience. But one of the things that I learned from coming to New Zealand, Aotearoa, is that the breath is where it's at when it comes to peacemaking. And life in general, really. The breath and the water and food. Like we can last for 7 weeks without food, we can last for 7 days without water, but we can only last about 7 minutes without any breath, I think. I could be wrong on that, but you get the general idea. And in singing that and bringing the energy of love to the universe, it's kind of putting forward a stall of what we actually want to achieve. But it also, by breathing, whether it's singing or not, we're reclaiming something of our ancient history, because for a lot of colonized people, the singers, the sayers, the shamans, the dancers and the songwriters, those are the people who were wiped out first. That's who St. Patrick got rid of, as the snakes. And it's also, you know, what happened in most countries when invaders took over was that, you know, the music stopped. The song stopped, but the breathing stopped. And the breathing is the important thing, breathing deeply. And when I work with my students, remembering to actually breathe deep, even for me now, and I've been doing it for years, but to consciously remember to breathe deeply really makes a big difference to the quality of your ability to be present and to listen to people and to not jump into the conversation, but actually stay back and allow people, other people, to be part of the conversation. Now, the reason that I'm speaking here, I'm in New Zealand, and I felt a bit uncomfortable about being the first speaker, because I really did feel like it's somebody from New Zealand should be, because as you can probably tell from my lovely Irish accent, I'm not actually originally from New Zealand. But everybody was busy or situations arose, and so you've got me instead. So you're just going to have to deal with it, which is good for me. But you know, anyway, now the other thing to tell you is that I got started on this kind of peace art journey about nearly 30 years ago with a piece called Lay Down Your Arms. And I've brought some examples of current Lay Down Your Arms that we're doing here. So basically what happened was a pregnant woman, her mother and grandmother were shot, and a lot of other people were shot in a horrible shooting in Northern Ireland. And the community groups that I was working with at the time were well, there was just a lot going on. I'm not going to digress, but anyway, everybody started calling for the laying down of arms because this was a particularly bad shooting. And so we started casting people's arms, and we cast people who were at the forefront of the conflict. So we cast paramilitaries, prisoners, politicians, priests, you know, as broad a cross section of the community as we could get. And it took quite a lot of time and breath and gentle touch and gentle being beside people who were potentially quite dangerous, but also had a story to tell too. And basically, we just took plaster casts of their arms, and then we made them up in clay and hung the clay arms up in the trees around Derry, because the name of the town that I come from is Derry, and that means place of the oak tree. But a lot of the oak trees had been cut down to make armadas to go to war in other places. There wasn't as many oak trees around. So it was trying to kind of connect to the trees as well, and to connect to our healing. But the idea of laying down everybody's arms and having everyone, as many people as possible included, but having everybody included in a way where everyone was equal, that there was no pyramid of power, there was nobody, you know, you couldn't distinguish whose arm was whose, so you couldn't pick on anybody, or you couldn't think that one arm was more important. We were all everybody's arms were equal. And the process itself is very, very gentle. You just take a plaster arm, you know, you hold hands with the person, you give them a nice arm massage with some Vaseline. Unfortunately, I haven't found anything other than Vaseline to use, so if anybody's got a better suggestion than Vaseline, I would love to hear it. And then you lay the plaster over somebody's arm while you basically have a conversation about, you know, disarmament, what that means to the individual, and what that can mean to a community, and what has actually caused people to take up arms. Why did those particular people? Because a lot of the people that I cast, whether they were paramilitaries or soldiers or police, many of them had shot people, and many of them still had nightmares and still had different ways of dealing with the process. And it seemed that the process kind of helped them reintegrate a bit into society and change some of the behaviours. And we ended up having like the very first ceasefire about 6 weeks after we did the casting, because the first ceasefire in my lifetime, and I was in my 20s then. So it was a really lovely project, and we've kept on going over the years, and we've gone to different places around the world and cast. And the actual action of casting brings about lots of differences. And so listening to everybody and bearing in mind all our connection, I laid out some of the arms that we've got out in my garden, and I'm going to take you for a walk if the internet will allow. If it goes off, Rami, you're just going to have to start dancing to keep everybody entertained until I get back. Okay. And so I'm just going to show you this, and so you can tell me what you think. So this is our garden, and these are the arms that we kind of cast in the last, most recent version of the castings. Can you see them all right?
Yes.
No. Yeah. And So I'm taking you out because we were talking earlier on about our natural intelligences, and trees are the most intelligent species on the planet. I firmly believe this. And by going out and kind of connecting with the trees, we quite often kind of get the insight.
We've started to lose you, Deirdre, now. I don't want to be dancing.
What weird and wonderful things. Hmm? You don't want to be dancing? All right. Are you out? Am I out of picture now? Have you still got it?
We see you.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, now
okay,
we can.
So can you hear?
Yes.
Yes.
So you can hear the cicadas in the background. And I thought, because everybody's been, 14 hours on a Zoom call, being out and as near to nature as you can is the best gift that I can give in this moment. And the piece of art that I was going to invite you to do is a simple mindfulness technique. If we've still got time, I can do that with you now before we wrap up.
Yes.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So with the trees behind, and I'm inviting you to kind of stand up and ground yourself with your feet flat on the floor, or if you're sitting down, make sure your feet are flat on the floor and your hands are kind of resting openly on your lap. And then take a big deep breath for a count of 4. Hold it, and then breathe out for a count of 4. And then I'll just let you see the trees instead of me. And so breathe in for a count of 4. Breathe out for a count of 4. Breathe in for a count of 4. Breathe out for a count of 4. Now, if you look at those trees, you'll see those beautiful green colours. Just allow those green colours to wash over you as if you're having a shower of colour, and allow that kind of green. I'm not just saying this because I'm Irish, but just allow that colour green to kind of come all over you and wash through, because it's a heart-centered colour, and allow it to go right into your heart. And if you want to bring pink in, you can as well, and allow that to go right down into your heart as well. And as you breathe in and out, allow that colour to feel its way through you. And then think about where the conflict is in your life. Where is the discomfort and the tensions that might affect you in your life? And while you're thinking about that, just keep on breathing, and then recognize who you may have conflict with. Keep on breathing. And just let it go. Let go of that conflict if you can. And then if you get a chance at some point in the future, just get a piece of newspaper or any kind of paper and fold it and make a series of hearts representing those people or those situations where the conflict is and that you want to send healing to. And just imagine that happening and flowing out through you to the world. And if you can pick 8, I think 8 is a good idea, because I'm going to copy Ramit with the 8-1 instead of 7-1, which I had normally. But I thought we'll do 8 ones. So make peace with ourselves, and then make peace with 8 other people. And if we all do that, we'll get around the world in no time. So there you go. Is that okay?
Yep.
Is there anything else now that you would like covered?
I'd like to, if you, Ramit, can disconnect the picture and I'll put something on. You moved from Ireland to New Zealand, right? And there's been a history in New Zealand as well. So I really wanted to ask you, and if you could share how you when you came to New Zealand. And I just pulled out this really nice sentence about this dispute resolution that is based on Tikanga Maori. approach. Restoring mana is the foundation of 𝐀𝐬𝐿𝐼𝐻𝕠𝕠 by acknowledging mamai, hurt, grievance, taking responsibility for actions, understanding viewpoints, and finding a way forward. That sounds very much like what you're saying. So how did you relate that? And you stayed in New Zealand. So is there much work for you to do that in New Zealand too?
Yeah. When I arrived in New Zealand, I really resonated with everything that I was introduced to through Māoridom. A lot of the stories are very similar to Irish stories. You know, the fact that the language was decimated in the same way. Like my grandfather got beaten for speaking Gaelic, and so we didn't speak Gaelic at home. A lot of my Maori friends, the same thing happened to them. So there was lots of kind of really deep, there was a really deep connection for me straight away, and the connection to like the Wanganui River. I landed in Wanganui, and it really felt like the Wanganui River kind of called to me. And now I live in a place called Wanganui, Tara, and Tara is quite significant in Ireland. So it kind of, for me, it felt like it was bringing both the Aotearoa and the era together. I've been privileged to do a lot of arts therapy and horse therapy with Maori and Pākehā in New Zealand, and action art and public art as well. And I was invited to learn karanga with Ryan and Ferris and a whole load of incredible women up in Auckland and outside Auckland, and it felt so much like it was connecting back to my culture in Ireland as well as connecting to Māoridom, because of the breath work and the voice. And in Gaelic you have the keening, which is where women would kind of step into situations and they could call out men on their behaviour, and they could call out the community if things were going wrong, and they could use their voice in a really, really strong way. And part of colonisation has lost that kind of tradition. You know, it's coming back in small parts, but it really felt like the gift of learning karanga and learning to breathe and to throw my voice, and also because I'm really concerned about the planet and the environment, and Māori so connected to the planet and so connected to land, and that's what's wonderful. And we went out and did some karanga in the at the side of the ocean and outside Auckland, and while there was about 14 of us in a big circle doing a karanga, which is a Maori call, and some of us decided to wade out into the water, and on the sand that we were walking on, there was like a black sludge, oily, silty sludge all over the place, and it was ice cold water. And we waded out and we did our calls, and then at the end, when the call had finished, it was really interesting for me because my call changed from Maori to Gaelic, and I would not be a Gaelic speaker, but it just came on as part of it, and that was an amazing healing experience for me. But also when I looked down, all of the oily silt on the sand had all disappeared, and the vibrations from our call had literally cleaned the sand around us, you know, and the molecules around us. And it reminded me of like what the Indigenous grandmothers are talking about water, and that every time we use any water, any water that we use is going back into circulation with all of us. And so it's cleaning and cleansing everything. So every time we use water, if we bless that water and send love and healing into that water, we're sending that out around the world as well. And that's what we were doing with our call, and that's what I was trying to do with that little waiata as well, was, you know, to just send that love and that healing around. And I'm incredibly grateful, you know, because not only did I learn about Maori history and tikanga and culture, and it restored it healed the 𝐾𝐬𝐻 and the hurt in me, and it also restored my mana for myself and for my ancestors. I could do work on the healing, intergenerational healing. I mean, you know, it's a work in progress. I haven't got it all sorted, I'd like to say, but you know, it's a real privilege. It's a real privilege, and that's why I sent you, like, we've got a little video of the 𝐂𝐬𝐻𝐿, because right at the moment, you know, if I wasn't here with you, I would be up at this protest up in 𝐂𝐬𝐻𝐿 for the river, because, you know, it's, you know, they're speaking the truth, and we need to listen, you know, and we've got so disconnected, and going out to the trees is another thing, you know, going out and listening. So.
Deirdra, since you mentioned water as a very important element, and something that it's maybe an element that we can work with also in order to spread the spirit of dispute resolution and the love and compassion that you are talking about, and you use so much through art and through your own involvement. Let us play the message from our grandmothers that talks about water and the importance of water as a healer as well. So Ramit, if you're ready, let's play this.
Granddaughter, the water can hear you. The water has memory.
Wabo, 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿, Nibi wabo, 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿, 𝐴𝐾𝐬𝐬𝐿, Nibi wabo,
Water is the life's blood of our mother, the earth. Water is the lifeblood of our own body.
To continue to pass on the knowledge that needs to be given unto the other generations. You are the keeper of the water.
Make the change in this life condition that we're in, that great-grandchildren will stand up to this truth of what life is about, and to live it in such an honorable way, the way ancestors came to this earth.
Each day when the sun rises, no matter how bad the day before might have been, there's a new chance for your hopes and dreams. And I say, 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐿, thank you for singing the water song.
𝐵𝐵𝐻𝑆𝐻 𝐼𝐢𝐬𝐝 𝐵𝐵𝐻𝑆𝐻 𝐻𝐸𝐬𝐝 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 𝐻𝐸𝐬𝐝.
Thank you very much to grandmothers and for their incredible prayers. So there is so much truth in the message of water, and no matter how long we discuss the conflict resolution and ancient future wisdoms, I think we have it right there. The water is around us. The water is everywhere. The water is inside us. And very often I feel when I connect to animals or trees, that's where I connect to, really the water within. And art is bringing this forward. And art is probably the one who has awakened our hearts, that we slowly started to give the rivers a legal status as well. And it's so good to see that all over the world, little by little, people are responding to that. And speaking of art and reconciliation through art, I think this is the right moment to play the message from Yuko Kudo. And then, Deirdre, I will ask you to engage again with your second part.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yuko Kudo, and I am a Japan Country Chair for Ecocivilisation Community. Thank you, Violeta, and all organizing team, and you for co-creating another opportunity for people to connect and learn from and with each other. And I am so sad I'm not there with you right at this moment, but my energy is there with you. And this is an opportunity to reflect on who we are as a collective and tune into our ancient future wisdom. And no matter where you are from, our ancestors have used storytelling to teach us and lead us and heal us in our journey. And I am a multi-hyphenated artist and human. I'm passionate about so many different things, but I am especially passionate about the power of storytelling and what we can co-create through art. And in this brief moment, I want to explore just that and how we communicate with each other. In the Connect-a-thon, in many international settings, we tend to communicate in English or a language that are permanent to folks who are present in that space. And when I say a language, this can also include nonverbal communication like hand gesture or sign language, braille, and music and dance, or even photos. And let's imagine that if we are able to open up to that level, do you know how you communicate the best? Does how you relate to what you want to communicate change if you're communicating in a different language? Think for a minute. And how does that feel in your body? And do you understand your language? Again, defining in a different way. And the true meaning of what you want to communicate. And I'll go even one step further. How do you know that when we understand each other? How do we know that we understand each other? And I believe that creating something together is a great way for us to practice just that. like building connectathon together. And I will show one example, and I was in a workshop earlier this month. It was an intense week-long creative boot camp with my collaborator. We've been developing a new musical that is based on a Japanese picture book, and we are developing a show here in New York. And when we work as a team, we use many languages. And if you heard anybody speak Japanese, Japanese is a very unique language, right? And going back to, I would love for you to think about language beyond linguistic term. So let's say when we communicate, our original author, the book author in Japan, he is based in Japan, and he primarily communicates in Japanese and also communicate in drawing and also in movement. And our director and lyricist, their first language is in English. And music and theater expression, that's their language. And our composers and also rhythm coordinator, they speak Japanese and English, and of course they speak music. And our producers speak a little bit English and primarily communicate in Japanese, right? And throughout the camp, I am there as an interpreter. And what's really interesting in this time was that we intentionally made the decision to communicate in our native language as much as we can, so that we can truly express and communicate what is deep in our heart. What is a true and core desire and passion that we can bring in for this production and this project? And that's what we wanted to put out and share and openly communicate with each other. And when I come in as an interpreter, my job is to really listen, right? And it's really important because we are talking about different things in a different language. Like, we had to be on the same page in order for us to create something, right? What we want to create, what we want to share, what is the vision? What do we want audience to feel and envision? Where are we going as a team? So again, in addition to linguistic language, what I need to translate is their creative expression, is their intention for messaging, what people wanted for the audience to see. And I do believe that a place of social change and innovation, and we come across so many similar situations that ideas and passion can really come together, and also there could possibly be a slight misalignment. It might feel like you're talking about the same thing, but are we really talking about the same thing? And sometimes that leads to a bigger conflict, right? So it's really important that we take time to slow down and take a step back sometimes if we need to, and take a breath, one breath at a time. So if we can add 5 checkpoints. First one, what is the story that we're telling? What do we want to share? And what do we want people to understand? What is the story that you want people to listen and hear and experience? And the second part, what is the assumption that you might have? What are you assuming? And the third part, where might expectation live? What do you are expecting from other people? Is it a reaction, response? Let's explore that. And fourth part, how else can I express? Is it just a word? Can I be different sound and music? Can I express visually, right? And number 5, ask ourselves question, do we understand each other? And do we know where we are going if you're going somewhere together, right? And to really communicate and ask each other a question. Hey, this is what I heard. Is this what you meant? So I want all of us to explore these ancient future wisdom of storytelling. The storytelling can really take you to a whole new level and imagination and curiosity. And I would love to invite you to explore how you connect to language beyond linguistic and communicate from different perspectives. And thank you so much for being here and connecting with each other and with yourself. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Yuko, for a lot of food for thoughts. Ramit, how do you respond to that?
Oh, there's just so much, but I think just the value of listening. I think as a message, if we can retain that in all of us across board, then not only do we listen to our ancestors, not only do we listen to the ancient wisdom, but we also listen to those who are around us who can then provide that wisdom to us. And I think this is a theme that's been tying in right from the sessions that we've been doing for the Future Ancient Wisdom sessions so far, where every individual has a different story to tell, even if they're telling the same story, because the same story will be told differently by each individual. And I think all of those variations are what we need to listen to and hear to actually make the most of the wisdom that is being imparted on us. The moment we start thinking that, oh, okay, this particular saying in this particular culture meant this, and we label it to mean just one thing, we're not scraping the surface. We're not even scraping the surface of what the wisdom truly is, because the wisdom lies in the interpretation that everyone brings out from that wisdom. And I think what Yuko said was brilliant, and what I was hearing was that to continue hearing and listening. I think that was the biggest message that I got. I actually had a question for Deirdre, because just in line with what Yuko was saying, when you first came into New Zealand and you started interacting with the Maori, I'm assuming you didn't understand the language. And how was that entire space for you? Were you able, and again, was Yuko said as well that you understand people, you have to understand people beyond languages, because sometimes we speak the same language and still don't understand each other. Right? Because the words that come out of our mouths, we say it in one particular way, someone else understands it in a different way, and that happens all the time. So is it really about language, and how did you, as an artist, as someone who connects with the heart, was it easy for you to connect? Was it difficult for you to connect? How was that entire experience for you?
It's a really interesting space. And I had to think really carefully about it, because okay, so I came from Northern Ireland, then went to England, and then came to New Zealand. And so in Northern Ireland, I was on one side of the religious divide, but we were brought up to believe that every human being is equal, regardless of what the religious preferences and whatever their races or an ethnicity. And then when I went to England, I found it quite challenging, because you know, there were signs on the door saying no blacks, no dogs, and no Irish, and so we were like the last of the list of people not to be in. So there was a different dynamic at play. So in Northern Ireland, there was one set of prejudice, and then in England there was a different set of prejudice. And then I came to New Zealand and realized that I was a white woman in a country that had been occupied, and I felt really uncomfortable being there and not sure about whether I had a place to stand there, and I had brought young children with me as well. So I was really concerned as to whether I should be there, and actually it was my Maori friends who were the ones who kind of went, yes, you definitely have to be here, you know, because you're bringing some stuff. But it took quite a while, because I sat in that discomfort, because, you know, I could see the hegemony around me, and I could see the injustice, I could see the power dynamics, and I could see the vested interests that were keeping systems So it's been quite a challenge. I found it quite painful. Even things like simple things which should be simple, like, you know, trying going onto the school board and trying to get you know, cheap black trousers so that all the kids can, you know, have a pair of black trousers that if there's a funeral or a tangy, that they can have that as part of the school uniform, but they can use it then for other things so that the children who haven't got as flash bank accounts will have access to something that will give them some mana and some status when that. And that was a horrific battle to get that through, because vested interests wanted embroidered special trousers that cost $100 more than the basic ones, which were simple ones, but it's like there were these blind spots in the power dynamic that I really kind of struggled with for a long time. But I think it was my Wahine Toa, my female Maori friends who kind of, and you know, other strong women who kind of came to the fore and kind of held me in that space until I kind of felt strong enough to bring my own art and my own truth through. But it's been quite a long journey, and even, you know, and that's where I like working with the horses and with the arts there, because there's no words needed, and so you're going back into a heart center where you're not getting into politics, you're not getting distracted by the glittery thing or the who said what, you're not getting distracted by that, but you're coming back to the present moment, what's happening here. And there's a thing in horse therapy called clean language. So you reflect back what you've seen, but by taking out all judgment. And I think so much of our language, and I think it applies a lot to the British language, but it happens in other languages as well. So much of our language is armed. Like even at the beginning of the Connect-a-thon, someone said, right, the fight is on. And I'm like, no, we need to have a dance on. We need to have a love on. We need, you know, and those, it's quite hard. Like I still do it. I still use the words that I grew up with. But one of the things that I learned, I'd say through yoga, was learning to bridge the languages, because in Northern Ireland the language is very, very weaponized, and I think the British language is particularly weaponized, and learning a language that found bridges, found connections, and allowed space for people to be just as they are. And that's one of the things I love about the horses, because people can turn up and just be who they are right now, right in this moment now. And that's all we've got to pay attention to. And our job is to keep our mouth shut, but watch what's happening and then be curious about what's happening enough to allow somebody to recognize what's happening in there, because they're the expert on them. I'm not an expert on you or on anybody else. Doesn't matter how many degrees of master's I have, I will only be an expert on me, depending on how much I've done. And you'll be an expert on you. And everybody's expert on themselves. I think our job as human beings is to hold that space around someone, to allow them to really see themselves and their beauty and their uniqueness and their, you know, there's something so special in each one of us. And there's only one unique manifestation that's ever going to happen on the planet of that person. And so we're doing them such a disservice by not finding ways to get that uniqueness out and support that person to see the beauty. And one of the things that with horses is they say, you know, you don't sit on the horse when you're doing horse therapy, you stand by the horse as an equal, because you can't see a mirror if you're sitting on it, and we all act as mirrors for each other. There you go. Sorry, I've gone off on a whole other, but there you go. Does that answer your question?
There are very powerful messages there, and as much as we can take it from a negative point of view, like being prejudiced, judgmental, having lack of listening, all this leads to conflicts. At the same time, what I hear from you is that we can just reverse and hold space to allow people to be truly themselves, not to be judgmental, but to truly hear people's hearts and people's inner voice, And of course, as Yuko was inviting us to listen and overcome the language barriers, things that get lost in translation, and maybe connect with other person beyond the language itself. So these are very powerful messages that were shared today. But is there anybody from the audience, any comments from the audience, questions that somebody would like to raise?
So I could probably step in, and one of the things, Deirdre, again, that you mentioned that we didn't end up speaking too much about was about the Maori and the rivers in New Zealand, and the questions that they're asking right now for the protection of those rivers. And just in terms of us understanding better, what really is the concern, and is there a reason why people are not listening to them, or are people actually listening to them?
I think it's that the vested interest thing that I was talking about earlier on is, I think we have systems in our planet at the moment, the capitalist model of ever expansion. And so some company wants to bottle water from the Wanganui River. The Wanganui River has been given an equal rights, as a human, to independent things. So, my guess is that the water's not too happy about being bottled, and we're not happy about it being bottled either, because actually, water comes from the mountains. It shouldn't be, and it definitely should not be in plastic, because the plastic bottles, are being shipped off then to Indonesia and polluting their spaces. I saw a clip the other day of a mountain of plastic bottles with 14 diggers high shifting it, and they didn't even make a dent in it, and so we're polluting not just by taking the water, but by having all these plastic containers that are going, because the plastic doesn't break down, and it ends up, it's been found to be in people's placenta and people's blood. Animals, lots and lots of fishes and birds are dying and suffocating because of plastic that we've put out. So, and one of the quickest ways of stopping that is to stop bottling water, so that it needs to stop. End of story. And people need to remember that actually that's our lifeblood. Just in the same way that the trees are our lungs, the water is our blood. When we destroy the water, when we contaminate the water, we contaminate ourselves. And we contaminate each other. It's bonkers. What are we thinking,
So Deirdre, how do you go about to resolve this conflict? This is obviously the conflict between the industry and ever-growing business model and the need of people to preserve the water, respect towards the river as a being. So what would be the way to reconcile this, to address this conflict?
Well, if everybody
help?
There's a website, I think it's called No Water, No, and I've sent a video to Remy, so you can link that on to connect us on for people to, if they want more information about this particular campaign. But it's also about being aware of all these campaigns, because it's not just this one river, it's all rivers. And also being mindful of, in the same way that I'm asking people to go and make peace with 8 other people, or cast the arms of 8 other people, they could also write to 8 other people and legislate for their rivers in their local areas and get those rivers declared as an individual with human rights as well.
Legal beings. So
legal beings, yeah. And also, boycott the companies that are producing this, because like Nestle and Coca-Cola are regularly at the top of the pollutant lists, and they're most plastic. But we're still buying their plastic bottles and they change the name. So be aware of, when you pick up something in the shop, is it by one of those companies that's doing this damage? Because there's lots of other alternatives. You can make plastic from seaweed. You can make plastic from different plants and stuff like that. These are oil-based plastics that will not actually break down properly for years and years and years. So boycott the companies, write to the companies and ask them to wind their heads on.
Well, thank you very much. We are just finishing at the right moment, 5 minutes to the hour. Deirdra, I'm so grateful for all your sharings and all the incredible work that you're doing. And I know that there is an art project that is going now around the world with this arm casting. You haven't said anything about that, but countries all around the world can join and use this very effective tool to bring the violence down, to empower people with a loving energy instead of fear. And usually the aggressiveness comes from fear. So thanks a lot. And thanks to Yuko as well for a very powerful message of languages and the importance of language in order to avoid the conflicts. So thanks a lot. We're closing this session. Ramit, back to you for your final thought.
Thank you. I think as final thoughts, since we're running out of time also, and we need to get to the next sessions, again, reminding everyone who's here and then everyone who will be watching the recording as well, make sure that you do watch the rest of the sessions of Future Ancient Wisdom as well. We've got more to go today itself. We have India and ASEAN with 𝐼𝐬𝐬, who's been around pretty much from the start, and I've been wondering when she's going to get some sleep. So that's going to happen in a few hours from now, and we'll be ending with Africa, which will be the penultimate session for the Connectathon. So tune in for India and ASEAN as well. Tune in for Africa as well. If you haven't seen the Americas and Europe, please, the recordings will be up. So do go and watch those and see those connections between all of these different regions of our world, right? So that's what I had to say. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording now.